Hi, I'm Modern Synthesist, otherwise known as Mr. Pink, and earlier this week we got this tasty number from our friend James Workshop, and I love that they put Adam and Eddie in this video. I also love that James Workshop's having a great time, and Adam and Eddie do not seem like they're having a good time. They seem very scripted. But anyway, it was a cool video. And yeah, the gist of it is that Games Workshop released an overpowered codex, then caved to community pressure to depower it. A lot of people talked about already how Votann was all messed up. I don't even care about meta or the game, and I heard about how messed up Votann is. In the wake of them releasing this video and depowering or repointing Votann, I saw a lot of people being like, Games Workshop has knowingly released a broken codex, and they conveniently fixed it after they had all the pre-order money, and this is a great conspiracy by Games Workshop to fuck people over and take all of their cash, and I don't really agree with that. And this is something that I've seen kind of like generally, like the whole Games Workshop conspiracy theory thing. So I just wanted to bring up something called Hanlon's Razor. What Hanlon's Razor says is never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. So when people are talking about like, oh, great Games Workshop conspiracy, take all your money, fuck up all the codexes on purpose, I'm like, yeah, or maybe Games Workshop is just stupid. Well, not stupid. Let's say ignorant. They're ignorant. And this is something I've tried to like take forward in like other parts of my life. This idea that when someone does something to you and you have like a gut reaction to it, sometimes you assume like that person's trying to screw me over, or that person's making fun of me, or that person's like being a shit to me. And in that moment, you're assuming malice. When instead, what if you assume that person was just ignorant of like how you feel, what your concerns are, any of that stuff? How this applies to Games Workshop is that though people right now are like, Games Workshop is evil and calculating, they are releasing broken codexes one after another. Look at Votann, look at Eldar, look at Tyranids. This is a pattern. I see a pattern here. Instead of that being a grand conspiracy, maybe that pattern is instead showing ignorance. Maybe what you're seeing is actually just some boring logistical nonsense, and that's what's going on here. That it's not the case that Games Workshop has like systematically released these overpowered codexes, made sure everyone bought them because everyone's like, oh my god, it's overpowered, and the overpowered dudes are like, yeah, give me that overpowered shit. And then once the overpowered dudes got all their money in, they're like, ha, psych, we changed the codex, it's not overpowered anymore, and we knew it all along. Why are you assuming that they knew it all along? What if they just made a mistake? What if they are ignorant? What if the situation is that there is a pattern here, but the pattern is not that Games Workshop is trying to screw us over and take all our money, but the pattern is that Games Workshop's playtesting system is not really working that well, and that's why we keep getting broken codexes, and they got to figure out after the fact. Because I don't care how many playtesters Games Workshop has, it can't compete with they said this in the article, a worldwide community of gamers and tournament players and all that kind of stuff. They're never going to be as good as that worldwide playtesting system. I would say that what they're being ignorant of here is the fact that clearly their playtesting setup is not working. It's not helping them to get out well-balanced codexes, and that's why we keep seeing these codexes come out that are broken or whatever. And I hear your next point. But Games Workshop is a huge, multinational market leader in tabletop gaming. They should be better than this. And to that I ask the question, why? Why do you think that Games Workshop would be any better at this? Have you ever worked in a large multinational corporation? Or any corporation larger than like 10, 15 people? In my experience, the bigger an organization gets, the less nimble they get. So the bigger Games Workshop gets, the less visibility they have over all of their processes. What people might be reading as a conspiracy, as being driven by malice, the want for money and to screw people over and willfully releasing crappy material, is, I think, better ascribed to crappy project management on the part of Games Workshop. And like, that's not that much shade to cast at Games Workshop. Like, every organization I've ever worked in has had a project management issue. Everyone has a lot of ideas, and no one has a very clear idea of how to get those ideas to market. And that's when you need really strong project management. And I think what we're seeing here is that some part of that boring logistical nonsense process is broken down, and that's why we're getting these broken codexes, that it's ignorance instead of malice. I know what you say, oh, but think about all the other things that have happened, Mr. Pink. Think of Curse City. What if the conspiracy there? I heard of artists spurned IP not belonging to Games Workshop, ripping it off, and they didn't want anyone to know, so they put it out, sold it all, and then poof, it disappeared. But now Curse City's back. So is it likely that there's some secret thing behind the curtains, shadowy disagreements with artists and IP? Or was it maybe the fact that a factory where they got all their cardboard shit produced went out of business. And they're like, oh crap, we got to find a new cardboard producing factory, because that's what I heard. Again, don't assume the malice part, the crazy conspiracy part, when you could just assume some random logistical nonsense getting in the way of things. This comes down to another razor, not the knife, philosophical thing, Occam's razor. And what Occam's razor says is the simplest explanation is preferable to one that is more complex. So if we have to think about this super complex conspiracy explanation about artists and this and that, and they're secretly planning to release all these codexes, and that they will release a rules fix like 1 month after the codex is released, because then they'll have all the money from people buying the codexes. Is that the most likely explanation? Or is the most likely explanation they're just like, oh shit, we didn't realize this was completely overpowered because the people who are testing it are not testing it against the right stuff, are bad? That to me would be a simpler explanation, that Games Workshop just messed up rather than they had a plan. And I was reading Solaris today by Stanislaw Lem, and in here there's a quotation. Even when on their guard, human beings inevitably theorize. And all that is to say that I get why we go to these places, that we've all had a very long, sometimes rocky relationship with Games Workshop. And if you've had experience with long, rocky relationships before, sometimes you can theorize, sometimes you can interpret things differently from how they actually are, and you can attribute malice to things that are maybe just ignorance. When Games Workshop screws up, we theorize. We're like, Games Workshop screwed up. Clearly this is all part of a bigger plot. Clearly they're doing this because they're mad at the community, because they hate these guys or that guys. We don't have Tyranids. We haven't had Tyranids for 8 years because Games Workshop hates Tyranids players. When in reality, maybe Games Workshop just has a lot of shit going on. Maybe they forgot about Tyranids. Maybe they just decided that some other things are going to sell better than Tyranids. Maybe they're like, yeah, we can get to those Tyranids later, but we want them to be the big bad for 10th edition. So we're going to save them. We're going to update them at that time, rather than malice. It's just ignorant of how badly Tyranid kids want Tyranids. More on that in another video soon. The point I want to make is that when we assume malice on the part of Games Workshop, malice typically requires like calculation and planning to pull off. And I hear some people be like, well, actually, what Games Workshop is doing is they've got this dastardly plan. And honestly, I don't think Games Workshop has the time for dastardly plans. I think they're just trying to make money for shareholders. They got a bunch of models they want to get out. They're making a release schedule, and they just want to get that release schedule out. And along that release schedule, sometimes they drop a ball, like they did with the Codex Votann thing. And that isn't to say that you can't be mad. Like, sure, Games Workshop makes you pay for rules in an environment where a lot of tabletop gaming companies just give you rules for free. They sell you these big hardcover books, and it's annoying that like you go out and you buy a big hardcover book, and immediately it's invalid, and you got to like print off this PDF and shove it in your big hardcover book. Games Workshop would tell you, oh, just use the Warhammer app, everything's fine. But not everyone loves that. I like having hardcover rule books. I got a bunch over there. I'm not saying you don't be mad that they were sloppy on this and that they didn't do their proper testing or whatever before they released the Leagues of Votann book. Yeah, be mad, totally. But don't ascribe more to it than them just being careless, or that them being like ignorant of something that was going on, or them just like not having the time to properly check things, because that's probably more likely what happened going forward, because this is going to happen again. The next time the Games Workshop does something that seems so dumb you want to pull your hair out of your head, ask yourself this question. Is this evil, or is Games Workshop just a mess? That's it for me today. Have a great day. Happy sculpting.
And of course, if you've enjoyed this video or my other sculpting tutorials, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I have just set up Patreon recently. There are no tiers. There's no like, you gotta pay this much to get this much. You can pay whatever you want. You can give me $1, give me $2, $4. Sculpting tutorials are still gonna be free on YouTube, but I'm gonna post some other fun stuff for my patrons. If you found my tutorials useful and you'd like to throw a couple of bucks my way, please consider signing on to Patreon.